Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Get this lying trash out of my house before I have you arrested for extortion." Ethan Caldwell's words exploded across his study like gunshots, each syllable calculated to annihilate what remained of Sophia Hart's foolish heart. She stood frozen in the doorway of his mahogany-paneled sanctuary, still wearing the silk nightgown he'd ripped from her body in passion just hours ago, her positive pregnancy test clutched in trembling fingers like damning evidence of her naive dreams. The same man who had worshipped her body in the darkness, who had whispered promises against her throat, now regarded her with the kind of revulsion reserved for something that had crawled out of a sewer. His perfect features, the sharp jawline she'd traced with reverent fingertips, the piercing blue eyes that had gazed at her with manufactured tenderness, were now twisted into a mask of contempt, so complete it made her physically sick. "Ethan, please, just listen to me," she began, her voice breaking. Listen to what? More lies. He stood from behind his massive oak desk, his tall frame radiating menace as he moved toward her. "You really think you can trap me with this pathetic scheme? Do you have any idea who I am? What my family is worth?" Sophia's legs felt weak. This couldn't be happening. Not after everything they'd shared. Not after 8 months of stolen moments, secret touches, and whispered conversations about a future together like, "The baby is yours, Ethan. You know it is. We've been together since—" He cut her off with surgical precision, the crude words slicing through her like a blade. "That's all this Wassa-wealthy man, using his maid for amusement. Did you seriously think it meant something more?" The cruelty in his voice was like a knife twisting in her chest, but this wasn't entirely unexpected. Over the past weeks, she'd noticed Ethan growing distant, colder, especially when his father criticized his business decisions or his friends made comments about keeping help in their place. She'd seen glimpses of this contempt before, quickly hidden behind passionate kisses and whispered apologies. Now the mask was completely off. "You said you loved me." Ethan's laugh was harsh and mocking. "I say a lot of things when I'm trying to get between a woman's legs. Surely you're not that naive." He circled her like a predator, his expensive suit immaculate while she stood there in wrinkled silk, vulnerable and exposed. "Let me explain how this works, sweetheart. You're a housekeeper, a nobody. I'm Ethan Caldwell, heir to a billion-dollar empire. We don't have babies together. We don't have relationships. We don't have anything. But the baby isn't mine." His voice was final, absolute. "And even if it was, which it's not, do you think anyone would believe you? A desperate maid trying to get pregnant by her employer for a payday. That's what this looks like to the rest of the world." Sophia's heart shattered completely. The test in her hand felt heavy as lead. She'd imagined this conversation going so differently. In her foolish dreams, he would have been shocked but happy. He would have held her, promised to take care of her and their child. She'd actually believed that what they shared in his bed was real. "I have money," Ethan continued, pulling out his phone. "I can make this problem disappear. There's a clinic downtown that handles these situations discreetly. 5,000 should cover it, plus a little extra for your trouble." "You want me to abort our baby?" The words came out as a whisper. "I want you to handle your mistake." He was already dialing security. "Yes, I need someone to escort the help out now." "Ethan, please." Sophia reached for him, but he stepped back as if her touch would contaminate him. "Don't touch me." His voice was pure ice. "And don't ever speak my name again. As of this moment, you don't work here. You don't know me. You've never known me." Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway security, coming to remove her like garbage. Sophia looked around the study where they'd shared so many intimate conversations, where he'd told her about his dreams and fears, where she'd believed she'd found love. The leather chairs, the wall of books, the massive windows overlooking the estate, all of it, had been a beautiful lie. "I want you to remember this moment," she said quietly, her voice steady despite her breaking heart. "I want you to remember how you looked at me, how you spoke to me, how you threw away the woman who loved you more than her own life." Her hand moved protectively to her stomach. "Because someday, Ethan Caldwell, you're going to regret this. Someday you're going to realize what you lost. The only thing I regret is wasting 8 months on worthless trash." He turned away dismissively. "Get her out of here." 2 security guards entered, their faces uncomfortable but professional. They'd known Sophia for months, had chatted with her in the kitchen, but now they looked through her as if she were invisible. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," one said gently. As they escorted her out, Sophia took one last look at Ethan. He'd already returned to his desk, acting as if she'd never existed, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. Was it regret? Doubt? It disappeared so quickly she might have imagined it. The mansion doors closed behind her with a final, echoing slam. Sophia stood on the steps where she'd first arrived 9 months ago, full of hope and determination. Now she had nothing but the clothes on her back and a baby growing inside her. But as she walked away from the only home she'd known, something dark and powerful bloomed in her chest alongside the pain. Ethan Caldwell had made the biggest mistake of his life today. He'd thrown away something precious and irreplaceable, and someday, somehow, she would make sure he understood exactly what that cost him. The broken girl walking down the driveway would not be the same woman who returned. And when she did return, Ethan Caldwell would discover that some betrayals come with a price he could never afford to pay. Chapter 2. Broken and Desperate. The rain hammered against the cracked windshield of Sophia's 15-year-old Honda Civic as she sat in the Walmart parking lot, counting the crumpled bills in her wallet for the 4th time that hour. $43.16, that was all that stood between her and complete destitution, between her unborn child and the streets that had already claimed so many others like her. 2 months had passed since Ethan Caldwell destroyed her world, and every day had been a spiral into deeper hell. The pregnancy was showing now, a definite bump that made finding work impossible. Even fast food restaurants took one look at her condition and found excuses to send her away. The few cleaning services that had initially seemed interested suddenly had no openings once they noticed her expanding waistline. It was as if her pregnancy made her radioactive, untouchable, a liability no one wanted to risk. Her stomach cramped with vicious hunger as she eyed the McDonald's across the street, the golden arches mocking her with promises of warmth and food she couldn't afford. She'd eaten nothing but stale crackers and tap water for 3 days, rationing what little food remained with the precision of someone who understood that every crumb might be her last. The crackers came from a gas station dumpster, day-old packages the clerk had thrown away but were still edible if she ignored the shame of it. But the baby needed proper nutrition. The baby needed everything she couldn't provide. The car's heater had died weeks ago, and the December cold seeped through every gap in the worn interior, like icy fingers, determined to drain what little warmth remained in her body. Sophia pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders, a threadbare jacket she'd bought at Goodwill with the last of her savings, and tried not to think about the heated floors of the Caldwell mansion, the gas fireplace in her former room, the warm meals served on china plates in the staff dining room. Her phone buzzed with its electronic death rattle. Another rejection text from a cleaning service. Position has been filled. Thank you for your interest. The 15th rejection this week. Every employer asked for references, and Ethan had made sure she'd never get a decent one. His poison had spread through the city's elite social circles like wildfire, whispered warnings at country club lunches and charity events. That girl who used to work for the Caldwells? Don't hire her. She's unstable, a liar, tried to trap poor Ethan with a fake pregnancy claim. The lies burned worse than the hunger. Not fake, never fake. She still had the medical records from the clinic, the blood tests that proved beyond doubt what Ethan refused to acknowledge. But his word carried weight in their insular world, and hers carried nothing at all. "Excuse me, miss." Sophia looked up to see a security guard tapping on her window, his breath forming little clouds in the frigid air. Her heart raced. She'd been parking here every night for a week, moving between this lot and 2 others, trying to stay warm and safe. This was the closest thing to shelter she had, and even this small mercy was being taken away. She rolled down the window, wincing as cold air rushed in like an Arctic assault. "Yes, officer?" "Ma'am, you can't sleep here. Store policy. You need to move along." His voice was stern but not unkind, the tone of someone who'd had this conversation many times before with many desperate people. "I understand. I was just—" Her voice caught, betraying her desperation. Where could she go? The homeless shelters had waiting lists that stretched for months, and most didn't take pregnant women anyway. The few that did were in neighborhoods where a young woman alone wouldn't last the night. Could I just stay until morning? I won't cause any trouble. I promise. The guard's expression softened slightly when he noticed her condition, his eyes taking in the obvious signs of her pregnancy and the hollowed look of someone who hadn't eaten properly in weeks. He probably had a daughter her age, maybe grandchildren on the way. Look, lady, I'm sorry, but I could lose my job. There's a women's shelter about 10 miles south on Route 9. They might have space. Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. She'd already been to that shelter twice, once last week and once the week before. They were full, with a waiting list that the harried social worker estimated would take 6 months to clear, but she couldn't tell him that, couldn't admit that she had absolutely nowhere else to go, that she was completely and utterly alone in a world that seemed determined to crush her. As she drove away, her gas gauge hovering just above empty like a countdown to disaster, Sophia felt the baby flutter inside her. The first time she'd felt definitive movement, and it should have been magical, a moment of wonder in the darkness. Instead, it filled her with crushing guilt. What kind of life could she give this child? What kind of mother was she if she couldn't even feed herself, couldn't provide basic shelter, couldn't offer anything but poverty and despair? The thought that had been haunting her for weeks crept back in with renewed force. Ethan's offer of $5,000 to handle the situation, the clinic he'd mentioned so casually, as if terminating a pregnancy was no more significant than scheduling a haircut. It would be so easy. End the pregnancy. Take the money. Disappear to another city where the Caldwell name meant nothing, and she could start over without the burden of a child she couldn't support. But every time she seriously considered it, rage flared in her chest like a living thing. This baby was the only proof that what they'd shared was real, even if he wanted to deny it. This child was the only thing Ethan couldn't take away from her, couldn't dismiss or destroy with his casual cruelty. Aborting would be letting him win completely, erasing the last evidence of the love she'd believed in so desperately. Her phone rang, the shrill sound making her jump and nearly swerve into the next lane. The caller ID showed her sister Lila's number, the sister who lived 3 states away with her own family and problems, who sent occasional care packages and called every few weeks to check in. Sophia had been avoiding her calls for weeks, too ashamed to admit how far she'd fallen, too proud to beg for help she knew Lila couldn't afford to give. "Hey, Lila," she answered, working hard to keep her voice light and normal. "Girl, where have you been? I've been calling you for days." Lila's warm voice was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. "How's that fancy job going? Still living in that mansion with all those rich folks?" Sophia's throat closed up completely. She couldn't tell her sister the truth, couldn't admit that she'd been stupid enough to fall for her employer, naive enough to believe a rich man could love a poor girl, weak enough to let herself be used and discarded like trash. Lila had warned her about getting too close to the people she worked for, about remembering her place and keeping professional boundaries. She'd been right, and Sophia had been spectacularly wrong. Things are complicated right now. The understatement of the century, delivered in a voice that shook despite her best efforts. Complicated how? "Sophia, you sound weird. What's going on? Are you sick?" The concern in Lila's voice made tears well up in Sophia's eyes. Her sister knew her too well, could hear the distress despite her attempts to hide it. "I'm just tired." The lie tasted bitter, but it was easier than explaining the whole sordid mess. "Long hours, you know how it is." And this tiredness wouldn't have anything to do with some rich white boy, would it? "I know that tone. Sis. I've heard it before when you get your heart involved where it doesn't belong." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Lila knew her too well, could read her like an open book, even across state lines and through a phone connection. But she couldn't burden her sister with this mess. Lila had 3 kids of her own and a husband who barely made ends meet, working double shifts at the plant. The last thing she needed was Sophia's drama dropping into her already complicated life. "I'm fine, Lila, really. I just need to get some sleep." "You better be telling me the truth, Sophia Marie Hart. Because if some man is giving you trouble, you know I'll drive down there and handle his ass myself. And you know I mean it." Despite everything, Sophia smiled. She could picture her sister, all 5'2" of her, squaring up to Ethan Caldwell in his expensive suit, ready to fight for family the way she always had. "I know you would. I love you. Love you too, baby girl, but I'm worried about you." You don't sound right. Are you sure you don't need me to come down there? I'm sure. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? You better. And Sophia, whatever's going on, whatever kind of trouble you're in, it's not permanent. You hear me? You're stronger than you know, and you'll get through this. After hanging up, Sophia sat in the parking lot of a closed gas station and finally let herself cry, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body and seemed to come from somewhere so deep inside her that she wondered if they would ever stop. She cried for the naive girl who'd believed in fairy tales and happy endings. She cried for the baby who deserved so much more than a broken mother with nothing to offer. She cried for the future she dreamed of that would never exist. And underneath it all, she cried with pure, burning rage at Ethan Caldwell for reducing her to this, homeless, pregnant woman, sobbing alone in a car that might not start tomorrow. But as the tears slowed and her breathing steadied, something else crystallized in her chest, a cold, hard determination that felt stronger than despair, more powerful than grief. Ethan thought he'd destroyed her. He thought she was nothing, nobody, worthless trash to be discarded when she became inconvenient. He was wrong. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the slight swell where their child grew, where new life persisted despite every attempt to break her spirit. I promise you, she whispered into the darkness, her voice steady and sure, your father is going to pay for what he did to us. He's going to learn that throwing away Sophia Hart was the biggest mistake of his privileged life. He thinks I'm worthless. He thinks I'm nothing. I'll show him exactly what nothing can become when it has nothing left to lose. The baby fluttered again, stronger this time, as if responding to her words. Sophia took it as agreement, as a sign that she wasn't alone in this fight. She started the car, ignoring the way the engine coughed and protested, and drove toward the city lights. Somewhere out there was her future uncertain, terrifying, but hers to claim. Ethan Caldwell had no idea what was coming for him, but someday, somehow, he would learn that some women don't break under pressure. They transform into something far more dangerous than their destroyers ever imagined possible. The broken girl crying in the Walmart parking lot was about to become someone else entirely, someone Ethan Caldwell would regret underestimating for the rest of his miserable life. Chapter 3. The Savior. The world tilted sideways as Sophia stumbled on the icy sidewalk outside the Grand Meridian Hotel, her vision blurring as black spots danced at the edges like vultures circling prey. Her body had finally surrendered to weeks of malnutrition and exhaustion, the cold December air cutting through her threadbare coat like knives. She'd been walking for hours, trying to stay warm, trying to find somewhere, anywhere, that might offer shelter for just one night. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was collapsing outside one of the city's most exclusive hotels, a place where a single night's stay cost more than she'd made in a month at the Caldwell mansion. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the warm glow of crystal chandeliers, wealthy guests in designer clothes, sipping champagne and discussing their comfortable problems while she froze to death on their doorstep. Please, she whispered to no one, her hand instinctively protecting her belly as she felt herself falling, not the baby. Strong arms caught her before she hit the concrete, pulling her against a solid chest that smelled of expensive cologne and winter wind. Through her haze, she heard a deep voice, commanding and genuinely concerned. Christ, she's hypothermic. Call an ambulance now. No, Sophia managed to gasp, struggling weakly in the stranger's arms. The word came out as barely more than a whisper, but the desperation behind it was unmistakable. No hospital. Can't afford. Can't afford what? To live? The voice was sharp with anger, but not at her, at the circumstances. At a world that would let a pregnant woman collapse from hunger on a city street. Look at me. Focus on my voice. Sophia forced her eyes open and found herself staring into the most intense gray eyes she'd ever seen. The man holding her was perhaps 35, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and features that belonged on magazine covers. Everything about him screamed wealth and power, from his perfectly tailored black coat that probably cost more than her car to the way people jumped to obey his orders without question. But it was his eyes that held her attention, gray depths that seemed to see everything, understand everything. What's your name? He asked, his voice gentler now, though she could sense the steel beneath the silk. Sophia, she whispered, then tried to pull away despite her weakness. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "You don't have to. When did you last eat real food, not scraps?" The direct question caught her off guard. Most people would ask if she was okay or what happened, offering platitudes and empty concern. This man cut straight to the heart of the problem with surgical precision. "Tuesday, I think. Today was Friday." The math was devastating, even to her. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the expensive fabric of his collar. "Christ. Julian, forget the ambulance. Bring the car around. We're taking her somewhere safe." "Sir, perhaps we should call the authorities," another voice began, probably hotel security trying to remove the homeless woman from their pristine entrance. "The authorities?" The man's voice turned deadly cold, the kind of tone that could freeze blood in veins. "A pregnant woman is collapsing from hunger on our city's streets, and you want to call the authorities?" "What authorities?" "The ones who created this situation by failing her in the first place." "Bring the car." Sophia found herself being lifted effortlessly and carried toward a sleek black Bentley that had appeared as if by magic. The man holding her moved with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to command, to having his orders followed without question. The leather seats were warm and soft, a stark contrast to the torn fabric of her Honda. The interior smelled of luxurious leather, expensive wood polish, and the faint scent of money that seemed to permeate everything the wealthy touched. "The plaza," the man told his driver, settling beside her with careful precision, "and call ahead. I want their best suite prepared, and a private doctor standing by. Full medical staff, whatever she needs." "I can't," Sophia finally managed, her voice stronger now that she was warm. "I can't pay for any of this." He looked at her with those piercing gray eyes, and she felt exposed, as if he could see every secret she carried, every shame she'd endured. "Did I ask you to pay? But I don't even know who you are." "Gabriel Stone." He said it simply, as if the name should mean something to her, and suddenly it did. Gabriel Stone, the tech mogul whose company, Stone Enterprises, had been making headlines for months. Ethan had raged about him countless times over dinner, calling him a ruthless bastard who'd stolen multiple deals from Caldwell Enterprises. According to Ethan, Gabriel Stone was everything wrong with new money, aggressive, unpredictable, and completely without respect for old family traditions. He'd built his empire from nothing, clawing his way up from poverty to become one of the most powerful men in America. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, suspicious despite her desperate situation. In her experience, powerful men didn't help women like her without expecting something in return. "Because you need help," his answer was matter of fact, delivered without pretense or manipulation, "and because I've been where you are." "I doubt that." Sophia looked around the luxurious car interior, taking in details that represented more wealth than she'd ever imagined. "I don't think you've ever been homeless." Something dark flashed across his features, a shadow of old pain that transformed his face from merely handsome to genuinely human. "You'd be surprised. 20 years ago, I was sleeping under bridges, stealing food to survive. I know what it's like to be invisible, to have the world look through you, like you don't exist. The only difference between you and me is opportunity and time." There was truth in his voice, the kind of authenticity that couldn't be faked. This man knew hunger, knew desperation, knew what it felt like to be discarded by a world that measured worth in dollar signs. The revelation made her feel less alone, less like the only person who'd ever fallen so far. The car pulled up to the Plaza Hotel, where uniformed staff waited on the sidewalk like an honor guard. Sophia had walked past this place dozens of times, but never imagined she'd enter it. The lobby was all marble and gold, intimidatingly elegant. She was acutely aware of her thrift store clothes and unwashed hair, of the way she must look to these people who lived in a world of endless luxury. "Mr. Stone, your suite is ready," the manager said with barely concealed curiosity about Sophia. "The physician is already waiting upstairs." In the elevator, Sophia caught her reflection in the polished mirrors and felt sick. She looked like exactly what she was, a desperate, broken woman who'd lost everything. Her hair hung limp and unwashed. Her clothes were wrinkled and stained. Her face was gaunt from hunger and stress. What must this powerful man think of her? "Stop," Gabriel said quietly. "Stop what?" "Whatever you're thinking about how you look or what I think of you. I see strength." not weakness. Survival, not failure. His gray eyes met hers in the mirror. I see someone who's been knocked down but hasn't given up. That's rarer than you might think. The suite was larger than some apartments she'd lived in, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, and the furniture probably cost more than she'd made in a year at the Caldwell mansion. A distinguished older man in a white coat stood waiting with a medical bag, his expression professional but kind. "This is Dr. Bennett," Gabrielle explained. "He's going to make sure you and the baby are okay." The examination was thorough but gentle. "Doctor." Bennett's expression grew increasingly concerned as he checked her blood pressure, listened to the baby's heartbeat with equipment that looked like it belonged in a space program, and reviewed the basic health questions that revealed the extent of her malnutrition. "Severe malnutrition and dehydration," he told Gabriel quietly, though Sophia could hear every word. "Another few days, and we could have lost both mother and child. She needs immediate IV fluids and careful nutrition management. We're talking about weeks of recovery, not days." "Whatever she needs," Gabriel's voice was final, brooking no argument. "Cost is not a factor." As the doctor set up an IV with the efficiency of someone accustomed to private medical care, Sophia watched Gabriel pace the room, his phone pressed to his ear as he made rapid-fire arrangements. She caught fragments. Nutritionist, maternity clothes, temporary housing, secure location. He was reorganizing his entire day around a stranger he'd found on the street, spending more money on her care than she'd ever seen in her life. "Why?" she asked when he finally hung up. Gabriel sat in the chair beside her bed, his expensive suit incongruous with the medical equipment surrounding them. "Why what? Why are you doing this? You don't know me. I could be anyone, a drug addict, a criminal, someone trying to scam you." She'd heard enough stories about con artists targeting wealthy men to know how this might look. "Are you?" "No, but then why does it matter what you could be?" "I know what you are right now, a woman who needs help." He leaned forward, his gray eyes intense, with something she couldn't quite identify. "Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, Sophia. The question is, what you're going to do with the one I'm offering you." For the first time in months, she felt something other than despair stirring in her chest. This man, Ethan's greatest rival, though she hadn't told him that, yet was offering her exactly what Ethan had refused to give: respect, dignity, a chance to prove her worth. "I don't want charity," she said firmly, her voice growing stronger as the IV fluids worked through her system. "If you're going to help me, I want to earn it. I'm smart, I'm educated, and I'm willing to work harder than anyone you've ever hired." A slow smile spread across Gabriel's face, transforming his stern features into something almost boyish. "Now that's what I wanted to hear. Tell me about yourself, Sophia. What skills do you have that I can use?" As she began to talk about her business degree, her organizational abilities, her experience managing complex households, her fluency in multiple languages, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope, not the naive hope she'd had with Ethan, but something stronger and more practical. This man was listening to her, really listening, treating her words as valuable instead of dismissing her as insignificant. She was done being a victim. Gabriel Stone had given her a lifeline, and she was going to use it to transform herself into someone Ethan Caldwell would never recognize, someone who could destroy him completely. As the fluids continued to drip into her system, restoring her strength and clearing her mind, Sophia began to plan. She had knowledge, insider information about the Caldwell family's weaknesses, their business practices, their personal scandals. She had motivationa, burning desire for revenge that would fuel her through whatever came next. And now she had opportunity access to Ethan's greatest enemy and the resources to make that revenge a reality. Ethan Caldwell thought he'd destroyed her when he threw her out. He had no idea he'd just created the instrument of his own downfall. Chapter 4. Rebirth. 8 weeks later, Sophia barely recognized the woman staring back at her from the floor-to-ceiling mirror in her suite at Stone Towers. Gone was the broken, desperate girl who'd collapsed outside the hotel. In her place stood someone entirely new, confident, polished, radiating the kind of quiet authority that made rooms fall silent when she entered. The transformation hadn't been merely cosmetic, though the external changes were dramatic. The tailored charcoal dress hugged her growing curves perfectly, expertly designed to accommodate her pregnancy while maintaining an air of professional sophistication that commanded respect. Her hair, now professionally styled every week at the city's most exclusive salon, fell in glossy waves past her shoulders. Her skin glowed with health, her posture was straight and confident, and her eyes, once dulled by despair, now sparkled with sharp intelligence and carefully controlled ambition. But the real change went deeper than appearances. She moved differently now, spoke with authority, carried herself like someone accustomed to having her opinions valued and her decisions respected. The hesitant housekeeper, who'd once apologized for existing, had been replaced by a woman who expected deference and usually received it. "The morning briefings are ready. Miss Hart," came a voice from the intercom system that connected her private office to the executive floor. "Thank you, Clara. I'll be right there." Sophia's voice was different, too steadier, more commanding, with the kind of tone that made people pay attention. She'd discovered that when people expected authority from you, you naturally grew into it. Confidence was a skill that could be learned, just like any other. As Gabriel's executive assistant, she'd thrown herself into learning every aspect of his business empire with the dedication of a woman who had everything to prove and nothing left to lose. Stone Enterprises wasn't just a tech company, it was a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with interests in everything from renewable energy to luxury real estate, from cutting-edge pharmaceuticals to emerging market investments. And Gabriel had given her access to all of it, testing her, challenging her, watching her prove herself day by day with the intensity of someone evaluating a potential partner rather than just an employee. The penthouse office where she worked was a temple to modern Powerol glass and steel, with a view of the entire city spread out like a kingdom at her feet. From her desk, she could see the Caldwell family's corporate headquarters in the distance, a reminder of everything she'd lost and everything she planned to reclaim. The building looked smaller from here, less imposing, as if distance had revealed it for what it truly was. Just another aging monument to inherited wealth in a world that was rapidly moving beyond such outdated concepts. "Good morning." Gabriel's voice made her turn. He entered the office with his usual commanding presence, impeccably dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. But it was his eyes that always captured her attention, those intense gray depths that seemed to see everything, understand everything, value everything about her that Ethan had dismissed as worthless. "Morning," she replied, handing him the tablet with his daily schedule. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, a contact that had become increasingly common and increasingly charged with unspoken possibilities. The Seoul conference call went extraordinarily well. They're ready to move forward with the merger ahead of schedule, and the Tokyo markets are responding positively to yesterday's announcement. We're looking at a 15% uptick in Asian investments. Impressive. And the Caldwell situation? Sophia's pulse quickened with the familiar thrill of strategic warfare. For the past month, they'd been carefully orchestrating a campaign to undermine Ethan's latest Venturia revolutionary battery technology that Caldwell Enterprises had been developing for years. Their lead engineer just accepted our offer. Dr. Emily Walsh will be joining Stone Enterprises next week, bringing her entire research team with her. Gabriel's smile was sharp and satisfied, the expression of a predator who'd successfully cornered his prey. Ethan must be losing his mind. Apparently, he threw a laptop across his office when he heard, then spent an hour screaming at his father about corporate espionage. Sophia tried to keep her voice neutral, professional, but couldn't quite hide her satisfaction. Every small victory against Ethan felt like justice, like the universe finally correcting a terrible imbalance. "You're enjoying this," Gabriel observed, moving closer until she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "I'm enjoying watching an arrogant man finally face consequences for his actions." "Is that all Ethan is to you? An arrogant man?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Sophia wasn't ready to examine. Over the weeks, she'd shared pieces of her story with Gabrielle: the pregnancy, the betrayal, the homelessness, but she'd never spoken Ethan's name. He never admitted that her desire for revenge was deeply personal and all-consuming. "He's a symbol," she said carefully, turning to face him fully, "of everything wrong with inherited privilege and casual cruelty, of men who think they can use women without consequences. Gabriel studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes searching her face as if trying to read secrets written in her expressions. You know, when I first found you, I thought you were running from something. Now I realize you're running towards something. The question is what? Before she could answer, he moved past her to the windows, his presence commanding the entire room even in silence. I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? Have dinner with me tonight. Not a business dinner. A real one. Just the two of us. He turned back to her, his gray eyes intense with something that made her breath catch. I want to know who Sophia Hart really is, when she's not being my perfect assistant. Sophia's breath caught. Over the past 8 weeks, their relationship had been strictly professional, though she'd be lying if she said she hadn't noticed the way he looked at her sometimes, the way conversations would pause when their hands accidentally touched during document exchanges. The way he seemed to find excuses to be near her, to ask her opinion on matters that went far beyond her job description. There was an electricity between them that grew stronger every day, a tension that had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with the undeniable attraction of two powerful people recognizing each other as equals. Gabriel, I don't think that's... Why? Because you work for me? He turned back to her, his gray eyes blazing with determination. Or because you're pregnant with another man's child? The direct question made her flinch. They'd never discussed the specifics of her pregnancy, never talked about the father who'd abandoned her. Both. The pregnancy doesn't matter to me, Sophia. I've made that clear from the beginning. His voice was steady, certain. And as for the work situation, I'm a billionaire who owns this company. I can date whoever I choose. And I choose you. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body, see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. Unless you're still in love with him? What? No. The denial came out sharper than she intended, more vehement than was probably wise. I hate him. Hatred and love are often two sides of the same coin. His observation was quiet, thoughtful, delivered without judgment, but with the kind of insight that made her feel exposed. Not in this case. Sophia's voice was firm, final. Ethan Caldwell destroyed any feelings I ever had for him. He threw me away like garbage, denied his own child, and left me to die on the streets. Whatever I felt for him is dead and buried. Something flickered in Gabriel's expression, satisfaction, perhaps, or relief. Then have dinner with me. Let me show you how a real man treats a woman he respects. The comparison to Ethan was obvious and intentional. Everything Gabriel had done since finding her had been the opposite of Ethan's cruelty. Where Ethan had hidden her away like a shameful secret, Gabriel had given her a position of prominence in his company. Where Ethan had dismissed her intelligence, Gabriel challenged and valued her mind. Where Ethan had discarded her when she became inconvenient, Gabriel had literally saved her life and then given her the tools to rebuild it better than before. One dinner, she said finally. One dinner, he agreed, but his smile suggested he was already planning many more. That evening, Sophia found herself in the back of Gabriel's Bentley, wearing a stunning black dress that accommodated her growing belly while making her feel like a goddess. The transformation from homeless woman to billionaire's dinner companion would have seemed impossible just 2 months ago. But here she was, living proof that sometimes the most devastating falls can become the foundation for the most spectacular rises. The restaurant he'd chosen was exclusive enough that they probably had a months-long waiting list. But the maitre d'hôtel greeted Gabriel by name and led them to a private table overlooking the city lights. The view was spectacular. But Sophia found herself more interested in studying the man across from her. This powerful, dangerous stranger who'd become her savior and might yet become something more. You're nervous, Gabriel observed as they settled into their seats. A little, she admitted. It's been a while since I've done this. What? Eaten dinner? She laughed, despite herself, a sound that felt rusty from disuse. Been on a date. The father of my baby wasn't exactly the dating type. What type was he? The question was casual, but Sophia sensed the sharp intelligence behind it. Gabriel was fishing for information, trying to piece together the story she'd only told him in fragments. She could see him cataloging every detail, building a profile of the man who'd hurt her. The using type, she said simply, the kind of man who takes what he wants and throws away what he doesn't need. His loss is my gain. The simple statement, delivered with such certainty, made Sophia's heart skip. When was the last time a man had looked at her like she was a prize instead of a burden? As the evening progressed, she found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't in months. Gabriel was a brilliant conversationalist, moving effortlessly from business to art to literature, with the kind of educated ease that came from genuine curiosity about the world. He listened when she spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and treated her opinions as if they mattered. As if she mattered. "You're different from what I expected," she said over dessert. "Different? How?" "Ethan always said you were ruthless, a shark who destroyed everything in your path." Gabriel's smile was predatory, dangerous, and somehow incredibly appealing. "Ethan Caldwell isn't wrong about that. I am ruthless when I need to be. The difference is I protect what's mine." The possessive note in his voice sent heat through her body like electricity. "And what's yours?" "That remains to be seen." His eyes held hers across the table, gray depths that seemed to hold promises and threats in equal measure. "But I have a feeling I'm about to find out." As they drove back to Stone Towers, Sophia found herself studying Gabriel's profile in the dim light. He was everything Ethan wasn't: self, made instead of inherited wealth, genuine instead of pretentious, protective instead of destructive. Where Ethan had been beautiful but ultimately hollow, Gabriel was beautiful and substantial. A man who'd built an empire through intelligence and determination rather than accident of birth. "Thank you," she said as they reached her floor, "for dinner, for everything, for saving my life, for giving me a chance, for treating me like I'm worth something." Her voice was soft but steady. "You've given me back my self-respect." Gabriel cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with infinite tenderness. "You are worth everything, Sophia. The man who threw you away is an idiot who's going to spend the rest of his life regretting his stupidity." When he kissed her, it was nothing like Ethan's demanding possession. It was reverent, patient, full of promise and respect. When they broke apart, Sophia felt like she was finally, truly alive again, not just surviving, but thriving. "Good night," Gabriel whispered against her lips. As she watched him walk away, Sophia realized that her rebirth was complete. The broken girl Ethan had discarded was gone forever. In her place stood a woman of power, protected by one of the most dangerous men in the world, and ready to claim everything that should have been hers from the beginning. Ethan Caldwell had no idea what was coming for him, but he was about to learn that some women don't just survive betrayal, they transform it into fuel for a revenge that burns hotter than the original love ever did. Chapter 5. Love and War. The first cry pierced the sterile air of the private delivery room at Mount Sinai Hospital, and Sophia felt her heart explode with love so fierce it took her breath away. After 14 hours of labor that had tested every limit of her endurance, her son had finally arrived, and he was absolutely perfect in every possible way. "He's beautiful," Gabriel whispered, his voice rough with emotion as he held her hand, his grip steady and reassuring. He'd been beside her through every contraction, every moment of pain, never leaving even when the doctor suggested he might want to wait outside during the difficult parts. His expensive suit was wrinkled from hours in the hospital chair, his usually perfect hair disheveled. But he'd never looked more handsome to her than he did in this moment of pure vulnerability and joy. Sophia watched through tears of overwhelming love as the nurse cleaned and weighed the baby before placing him on her chest. 8 pounds, 2 ounces of pure miracle, with a shock of dark hair and the kind of perfect features that spoke of good genetics from both sides of his complicated parentage. His tiny fist immediately wrapped around her finger with surprising strength, and she knew in that moment that she would kill anyone who tried to hurt this child. The baby's eyes were alert, already searching for his mother's face with the kind of intense focus that suggested intelligence. When he looked at her, Sophia felt a connection so profound it seemed to rewire her very soul. This was love in its purest form, unconditional, protective, transformative. "Hello, Noah," she whispered against his soft head, breathing in that incredible new baby scent that seemed designed by nature to create instant bonds. "Mommy's been waiting for you." "Noah Stone," Gabriel said firmly, and when Sophia looked up at him in surprise, His gray eyes were blazing with determination that brooked no argument. "If you'll let me adopt him legally, completely, I want to be his father in every way that matters. Not just emotionally, but officially. I want my name on his birth certificate, my protection around him, my love to be the foundation of his life." The tears came harder then, great heaving sobs of relief and gratitude and overwhelming emotion. Ethan had rejected this precious baby before he'd even been born, but Gabriel was claiming him without hesitation, without conditions, without any thought of the complexities it might create. This man, who could have anyone, who could have biological children of his own someday, was choosing to make her discarded son his heir. "Are you sure?" "He's not your biological." "He's mine," Gabriel cut her off, his voice leaving no room for argument. "From the moment you walked into my life carrying him, he became mine. Biology is just genetics, Sophia. Love makes a family. Commitment makes a father. Choice makes a legacy." 3 days later, as they settled into the nursery Gabriel had created in his penthouse, Sophia marveled at how completely her life had transformed. The room was a masterpiece of baby luxury custom furniture, handcrafted by European artisans, the finest organic linens, and every possible convenience that money could provide. But it was the way Gabriel held Noah, completely natural and protective, that made her fall deeper in love with him. She watched as he changed the baby's diaper with surprising competence, speaking in soft tones about stocks and business strategies, as if Noah could understand every word. "You see, little man, the key to successful negotiations is understanding what the other party values most," he murmured, securing the diaper tabs with gentle precision. "Your biological father values appearances over substance, tradition over innovation. That's going to be his downfall." "There's something I need to tell you," Sophia said as they watched Noah sleep in his crib, his tiny chest rising and falling with the peaceful rhythm of innocence. She'd been planning this conversation for weeks, knowing that complete honesty was necessary if they were going to build something real together. Gabriel turned to her, immediately alert. "What is it?" Sophia took a deep breath, gathering her courage. It was time for complete honesty. "I know who Noah's biological father is, and you know him too." "Who?" "Ethan Caldwell." The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel's expression went through several phases: surprise, understanding, and finally a cold fury that made him look genuinely dangerous. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as he processed the implications. "Ethan Caldwell," he repeated slowly, each syllable delivered like a death sentence. "The heir to Caldwell Enterprises. My biggest competitor." "Yes." "You were his housekeeper." "Yes." "And he threw you out when you told him you were pregnant." Sophia nodded, watching carefully for his reaction. She'd fallen in love with Gabriel over these past months, but she needed to know if this revelation would change everything between them. Some men's pride couldn't handle the complexities of loving a woman who'd been discarded by their rival. Gabriel walked to the window, overlooking the city, his hands clasped behind his back, in a gesture she'd learned meant he was thinking strategically. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "Tell me everything." So she did. The whole sordid story poured out of her: how Ethan had seduced her, made her believe she meant something to him, then discarded her like trash when she became inconvenient. She told him about the cruel words, the security guards, the months of homelessness and desperation. She held nothing back, giving him every detail of her humiliation and Ethan's cruelty. When she finished, the silence stretched between them like a taut wire ready to snap. "He called my son a mistake," Gabriel said finally, his voice so cold it made her shiver. "Gabriel?" He turned back to her, and the expression on his face was terrifying in its intensity. "Do you know what I do to people who hurt what's mine, Sophia?" "What do you mean?" "I destroy them." His smile was sharp as a blade, predatory and promising. "Completely, utterly, systematically. I make them disappear from relevance so thoroughly that people forget they ever existed. I don't want your pity." "Pity?" Gabriel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This isn't about pity. This is about justice. Ethan Caldwell threw away the most precious things in my world, you and Noah. He's going to learn what that costs." He moved to her then, pulling her into his arms with infinite gentleness despite the rage radiating from him. "I've been in love with you for months. Sophia. I've been planning to propose since before Noah was born. Learning that his biological father is my greatest enemy doesn't change that. It just gives our future together a satisfying sense of poetic justice. You've been planning to propose? Instead of answering, Gabriel dropped to one knee right there in the nursery, pulling out a ring box that made Sophia gasp. The diamond was enormous, flawless, and surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. It was the kind of ring that belonged in museums, worth more than most people's houses. Sophia Hart, you are the strongest, most brilliant woman I've ever known. You've made me believe in love, in family, in building something beautiful, instead of just destroying my enemies. His voice was steady, sure, filled with conviction that left no room for doubt. Marry me. Be my wife, my partner, my equal in everything. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that you and Noah are the most valuable things in my world. Yes, she whispered, then louder, her voice ringing with certainty. Yes, absolutely, yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Noah stirred in his crib, making soft baby noises that sounded almost like approval. The weight of the ring felt perfect on her finger, substantial, real, and permanent. There's one condition, Gabriel said as he stood, pulling her close. What? I want Ethan Caldwell to know. I want him to see exactly what he threw away. I want him to understand that while he's been playing at running Daddy's company, I've claimed his son and the woman he was too stupid to value. His eyes were fierce with purpose. I want him to watch us build an empire while his world crumbles around him. That's not revenge, Gabriel. That's just the beginning. No. His smile was predatory, dangerous, and utterly compelling. That's just the opening move. The real revenge comes when we systematically dismantle everything he's ever cared about this company, his reputation, his family's legacy, all of it. You want to destroy Caldwell Enterprises? I want to destroy Ethan Caldwell. The company is just collateral damage. Gabriel's eyes were fierce with purpose and barely contained rage. He made this personal when he hurt you. Now I'm going to show him what happens when you cross Gabriel's stone. And if I said I wanted no part of this revenge? Gabriel studied her face carefully, his gray eyes searching hers for the truth. Then I'd still marry you and adopt Noah and love you both for the rest of my life. But I'd still destroy Ethan Caldwell, just more quietly, more surgically. He hurt what's mine. That's unforgivable. The honesty was brutal and somehow comforting. Gabriel wasn't asking her permission to go after Ethan. He was offering to let her be part of it, to make her a partner in the vengeance rather than just a beneficiary of his protection. I want him to pay, she admitted, her voice steady and sure. I want him to understand what he lost, what he threw away. I want him to regret every cruel word, every moment of dismissal, every second he spent treating me like garbage. Then we'll make him regret it. Gabriel's voice was a promise, dark and certain. Together. 2 weeks later, the engagement announcement appeared in every major newspaper and business magazine, accompanied by professional photographs that captured Sophia's transformation from discarded housekeeper to billionaire's bride. The headlines were impossible to miss. Tech mogul Gabriel Stone announces engagement to former Caldwell. Family employee. And from housekeeper to billionaire's bride. The Sophia Hart story. The announcement was carefully crafted to maximize impact, with just enough detail to make Ethan understand exactly who was marrying his greatest rival. Every word was calculated, every photograph chosen to show Sophia at her most radiant and powerful. Sophia knew Ethan would see them. Everyone in their insular social circle would make sure of it, would watch his face as he realized exactly who Gabriel Stone was marrying. And when he did, when he understood that his former housekeeper was now one of the most powerful women in the city, the real fun would begin. She stood in the nursery, holding Noah, now 3 weeks old and perfect in every way, watching the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere out there, Ethan Caldwell was probably reading about her engagement, finally understanding who she'd become and what he'd lost through his own cruelty and pride. Your daddy threw us away like we were nothing, she whispered to Noah, who gazed up at her with those alert dark eyes. But we found someone who knows exactly how much we're worth. And now we're going to show your biological father what happens when you discard something precious. Noah made a small sound and snuggled closer to her chest. Sophia took it as agreement, as approval of the war they were about to wage. The opening shot had been fired with the engagement announcement. Ethan Caldwell had no idea he'd already lost the war, but he was about to learn that some betrayals echo through generations, and some women are far more dangerous than their enemies ever imagine. Chapter 6. The Perfect Weapon. The Hamptons estate where Sophia and Gabriel exchanged vows was a testament to understated power-rolling lawns that stretched to a private beach, gardens that whispered of generational wealth and unshakable dominance. As Sophia walked down the aisle in her custom Vera Wang gown, baby Noah in her arms, instead of a traditional bouquet, she felt like she was ascending to a throne that had always been meant for her. The dress itself was a masterpiece ivory silk that flowed like liquid starlight, hand-embroidered with pearls and crystals that caught the afternoon sun like captured fire. It had been designed specifically to accommodate Noah, creating a Madonna-like image that would dominate society pages for months. The symbolism was intentional and powerful. The discarded housekeeper had become a queen, and she was carrying the next generation of the Stone dynasty in her arms. "You look like a queen," Gabriel whispered as she reached him at the altar. His gray eyes soft with love and fierce with possession. "I feel like one," she whispered back and meant it with every fiber of her being. The ceremony was perfection elegant, intimate, and broadcast live on every society page and business network in the country. Sophia knew Ethan would see it, knew he'd watch her become Mrs. Gabriel Stone while holding the son he'd rejected. The thought filled her with savage satisfaction that she carefully concealed behind a radiant bridal smile, but it was the reception that truly announced their intentions to the world, serving as both celebration and declaration of war. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gabriel's voice carried across the crowd of billionaires, politicians, and media moguls as he raised his champagne glass, commanding attention with the natural authority of someone born to lead. "I want to thank you all for celebrating this incredible day with us. 2 years ago, I found my wife collapsed on a city street, pregnant and abandoned by a man too weak and stupid to recognize what he was throwing away." Murmurs rippled through the crowd like electricity. This wasn't typical wedding speech material, and everyone present understood they were witnessing something significant. "That man's cowardice gave me the greatest gifts of my life," Sophia and Noah hand. "While I should probably thank him for his stupidity, I'm not that generous." Gabriel's smile was sharp as a blade, predatory and promising violence. "Instead, I'm going to show him exactly what happens when you discard something precious." Starting Monday, Stone Enterprises begins a new chapter of expansion that will reshape this entire industry. The applause was thunderous, but Sophia could see the calculating looks on faces throughout the crowdsenators, CEOs, hedge fund managers. Everyone understood the subtext. War had been declared, and they were choosing sides. As the reception continued, Sophia worked the room like the trained professional she'd become, moving through clusters of power brokers with the grace of someone born to this world. These people, who'd once dismissed her as the help, now sought her attention, recognizing her as one of the most powerful women in the country. She was gracious, charming, and carefully collected information that would prove useful in the coming battle. "Mrs. Stone." Senator Thompson approached with his wife, both trying to hide their curiosity behind polite smiles. "Congratulations on your marriage. Quite a remarkable transformation." "Thank you, Senator, though I'd say it was less a transformation and more a revelation. I was always exactly who I am now. I just needed someone who could see it." The subtle dig at Ethan was unmistakable, and she watched it register on faces around her. By tomorrow, every detail of this conversation would have spread through Manhattan's elite circles like wildfire. "Gabriel is very lucky, Mrs." Thompson added, her tone suggesting she thought it was the other way around. "We both are," Sophia replied smoothly, her smile never wavering. "After all, the best partnerships are built on mutual respect and shared goals. Speaking of which, I understand Caldwell Enterprises is bidding on the same renewable energy contracts as Stone Enterprises." The senator's expression became guarded. "I wouldn't know the details of specific bids." "Of course not. I just find it fascinating how different companies approach innovation. Some focus on legacy and tradition, while others embrace disruption and change." Her smile was sweet as poisoned honey. We'll see which philosophy serves better in the current market. Later that evening, as guests gradually departed and the catering staff cleaned up the remnants of their triumph, Sophia found herself alone on the terrace, overlooking the ocean. Noah slept peacefully in her arms, exhausted from his first major social event but having charmed every guest who'd met him. Plotting our next move? Gabriel appeared beside her, loosening his tie with the satisfied air of a general who just won a crucial battle. Always. She leaned into his warmth, grateful for the solid strength of him. I've identified 3 board members at Caldwell Enterprises who are unhappy with Ethan's leadership. Lena Wong is particularly frustrated with his handling of the Asian markets, and Lena Wong's daughter is getting married next spring. She'll need a wedding planner, and I happen to know the best one in the city, who also happens to owe me several favors. Sophia's smile was calculating, predatory. Sometimes the most powerful conversations happen over flower arrangements and seating charts. Gabriel's laugh was low and appreciative. Remind me never to get on your bad side. You won't. You're mine now, completely and forever. She turned in his arms, Noah still sleeping between them like a symbol of their united future. But Ethan Caldwell, he's going to learn that throwing away Sophia Hart was like discarding a nuclear weapon that eventually found its way into enemy hands. Speaking of enemy hands, Gabriel's expression grew serious. I received some interesting intelligence today. Ethan has been asking questions about you, specifically about who helped you after he threw you out. He knows it's you? Not yet, but he's close. My sources say he's been obsessing over the wedding coverage, trying to figure out how his former housekeeper became one of the most powerful women in New York. Gabriel's smile was grim. Apparently, he spent considerable resources hiring private investigators to trace your movements from the time you left his house to now. Sophia felt a thrill of dark satisfaction. Good. I want him to know. I want him to lie awake at night thinking about what he lost, what he threw away so carelessly. He will. But we need to be careful. Ethan is desperate now, and desperate men do stupid things that can hurt innocent people. Let him do something stupid. It'll just give us more ammunition. Sophia's voice was cold as winter, harder than the diamonds glittering at her throat. I've spent the last year learning every weakness in the Caldwell family empire. I handled Ethan's private correspondence, knew about their failed deals, overheard countless phone calls about their financial problems, their outdated technology, their reliance on old contracts, their board members' personal scandals. I documented it all while I worked there, and you want to use it. I want to systematically dismantle everything Ethan thinks makes him Importantha's company, his reputation, his family's legacy. I want him to lose everything, the way I lost everything when he threw me out. Her voice carried the weight of months of planning, years of imagined revenge scenarios. I want him to understand what it feels like to have your entire world disappear overnight. Gabriel studied her face in the moonlight, silver light, casting shadows that made her look both beautiful and dangerous. This isn't just about justice anymore, is it? This is personal. It was always personal. Sophia's eyes blazed with determination that had been forged in homelessness, tempered in desperation, and sharpened by love for the family Ethan had tried to destroy. Ethan Caldwell tried to destroy me. He left me homeless and pregnant, thinking I was too weak to fight back. Now I'm going to show him exactly how strong I've become. And if he comes after Noah, if he tries to claim parental rights, he gave up those rights when he denied Noah existed. Her voice turned deadly, protective instincts flaring like a mother wolf defending her cub. And if he tries to use our son as a weapon against us, I'll destroy him so completely that no one will remember the Caldwell family ever existed. The promise hung in the ocean air between them, dark and final, and absolutely sincere. There's something else, Gabriel said quietly. Something I haven't told you. What? Ethan's father called my office yesterday. He wants to meet. Sophia went very still, her mind immediately racing through implications and possibilities. William Caldwell wants to meet with you? With us. He specifically asked if you'd be present. Gabriel's smile was grim, promising conflict. Apparently, he's been doing his own investigation into what happened when you worked for his family. He knows what Ethan did. I think he's starting to figure it out. And I think he's very unhappy with his son. Gabriel's voice carried the satisfaction of someone watching enemy ranks fracture from within. William Caldwell didn't build his empire by being stupid or blind. If he's reaching out to us, it means he sees which way the wind is blowing. Sophia's mind raced through the implications. William Caldwell was the real power behind Caldwell Enterprises, despite Ethan's official position. If he was questioning Ethan's actions, if he was reaching out to them directly, when does he want to meet? Next week, neutral territory. The Metropolitan Club. We'll go. Her decision was instant and final. Strategic instincts honed by months of careful planning. It's time the Caldwell family learned that their throwaway housekeeper is now their biggest threat. As they walked back into the house, their empire, their kingdom, Sophia felt the weight of her transformation. 9 months ago, she'd been homeless and broken, living in her car and contemplating desperate measures. Now she was one of the most powerful women in America, married to Ethan's greatest enemy and holding weapons that could destroy everything Ethan held dear. The revenge was no longer a fantasy or a distant goal. It was a carefully planned war, and she was perfectly positioned to win it. Every piece was in place, every ally secured, every weakness identified and catalogued. Ethan Caldwell was about to discover that some mistakes can never be forgiven, and some women are far more dangerous than their enemies ever imagine. The girl he'd discarded as worthless had become his destroyer, and she was just getting started. The war for his soul was about to begin, and Sophia Stone held all the weapons. Chapter 7. The Unraveling. Ethan Caldwell's hands shook violently as he stared at the newspaper spread across his mahogany desk, the same desk where he'd signed contracts that were supposed to secure his empire. Instead, everything was disintegrating, and he was drowning in the wreckage of his own making. Stone Enterprises dominates renewable sector, screamed the headline in letters that seemed to mock his failures. Accompanying the article was a photograph that made his blood turn to ice. Gabriel Stone and his wife at the government contract signing, both radiating the kind of power that cameras worship. The woman beside Stone was devastating elegant, confident, commanding attention like a born queen. Something about her face clawed at Ethan's memory, a familiarity that made his skin crawl with dread. This was the 5th major contract Stone Enterprises had stolen from Caldwell Enterprises in 4 months. The renewable energy deal, worth $3 billion, had been virtually guaranteed to them until it suddenly wasn't. Their Asian expansion had collapsed overnight. Their technological partnerships were dissolving like sugar in rain. Everything Ethan touched turned to ash. "Sir," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom like an alarm bell. "Your father wants to see you immediately." Ethan's stomach dropped to his shoes. William Caldwell only summoned his son for disasters, and this qualified as a complete catastrophe. The walk to his father's corner office felt like a death march through the halls of his crumbling kingdom. "Sit down, Ethan." William Caldwell's voice was ice-cold as he gestured to the chair across from his desk. At 65, the elder Caldwell still commanded respect and fear in equal measure, his silver hair perfectly styled, his suit immaculate despite the chaos surrounding them. "Explain to me how we've lost 5 major contracts to Stone Enterprises in the past quarter." "It's corporate espionage," Ethan said quickly, desperation bleeding into his voice. "Stone is somehow getting inside information about our bids, our strategies." "Our strategies?" William's laugh was harsh, cutting. "What strategies?" "The same outdated approaches we've been using for 20 years while our competitors innovate and adapt." "Dad, I've been working on modernization plans." "Have you?" "Because what I see is a company hemorrhaging talent, losing contracts, and generating negative press while our biggest rival grows stronger every day." William leaned back in his leather chair, his expression grim. "Do you know what I heard at the club yesterday?" Ethan remained silent, dreading whatever was coming. "Senator Thompson told me that Stone Enterprises has the most impressive advisory team he's ever encountered. Apparently, Mrs. Stone personally managed the negotiation for the renewable energy contract. Made our team look like amateur." "Mrs. Stone?" Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "His wife is involved in business operations. More than involved, word is, she's the strategic mind behind their recent expansion." William's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Gabriel Stone married a brilliant woman who understands both business and politics." "What did you do?" Ethan. Married that vapid socialite who cares more about her Instagram followers than our family's legacy. The reference to his recent engagement to Isabella Harper stung, but Ethan was still fixated on Stone's wife. What do you know about her, this Mrs. Stone? I know she used to work for our family. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. His father's expression was carefully neutral, but there was something dangerous lurking beneath the surface. Work for us? In what capacity? She was our housekeeper until about 18 months ago, when she suddenly disappeared from our employment without explanation. Ethan's vision blurred around the edges. The woman in the newspaper photos, the strategic genius destroying his company, it couldn't be. Sophia had been nobody, nothing, just a temporary diversion who'd tried to trap him with a fake pregnancy. What was her name? He whispered. Sophia Hart, now Sophia Stone. William's voice was deadly quiet. Care to explain why our former housekeeper is now married to our biggest competitor and systematically destroying everything we've built? 2. Don't Ethan's throat closed up completely. I've been doing some investigating. Son, making phone calls, asking questions. William stood and moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Apparently, Miss Hart left our employment under mysterious circumstances. No one seems to remember exactly what happened, which is strange for such a well-regarded employee. She was just the help. Ethan managed. The help who graduated summa cum laude from Columbia Business School. The help who spoke 4 languages and managed our entire household with flawless efficiency. William turned back to his son, and Ethan had never seen his father look so coldly furious. What did you do, Ethan? Nothing. We had a brief. It was nothing serious. Nothing serious? William's voice could have frozen hell. And yet our nothing serious former employee is now one of the most powerful women in New York, married to the man who's destroying us. Quite a coincidence. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent text from his assistant. Check the business news now. With trembling fingers, Ethan pulled up the financial websites. The headline made his blood run cold. Caldwell Enterprises stock plummets as board questions leadership. Sir, his assistant's voice came through the speakerphone, barely concealing panic. The board is calling an emergency meeting. Several members are asking about leadership restructuring. William's expression went from cold to glacial. It seems our board has lost confidence in current management. This is all Stone's doing, Ethan said desperately. He's manipulating the market, spreading lies. Is he? Or is he simply capitalizing on our weaknesses? William moved back to his desk, his movements predatory. Lena Wong called me this morning. She's concerned about our Asian market strategy. Apparently, Mrs. Stone made some very insightful observations about our shortcomings during a recent social gathering. The room spun around Ethan. Lena Wong was one of their most influential board members, and if she was listening to Sophiato Mrs. Stone, then the rot went deeper than he'd imagined. I can fix this, Ethan said quickly. I can turn things around. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already lost a war I didn't even know we were fighting. William's phone rang, and he glanced at the caller ID. Stone Enterprises. Interesting timing. Don't answer it, Ethan said quickly. Why not? William's finger hovered over the answer button. Maybe it's time I had a conversation with our former employee and her impressive husband. Dad, please. But William had already answered. Mr. Stone, what an unexpected pleasure. Ethan could only hear his father's side of the conversation, but each word felt like a nail in his coffin. Yes, I've been following your company's remarkable growth. Indeed, your wife has made quite an impression on the business community. A meeting? How thoughtful of you to suggest it. The Metropolitan Club would be perfect. Yes, I'd be delighted to meet with both of you. When William hung up, the silence stretched like a taut wire. They want to meet with us, William said finally. Gabriel Stone and his wife. Tomorrow evening. You can't seriously be considering. I'm considering how to salvage what's left of our company while there's still time. William's voice was final. And if that means having a conversation with the woman who seems to understand our business better than my own son, then that's what I'll do. Ethan felt the walls closing in around him. Sophia brilliant, vengeful Sophia was, systematically destroying everything he'd taken for granted. The woman he'd thrown away like garbage had become his worst nightmare. "She's doing this on purpose," he said, the realization hitting him like a sledgehammer. "This is revenge." Revenge for what, Ethan? Ethan couldn't answer. How could he explain that he'd gotten their housekeeper pregnant and thrown her out like trash? How could he admit that he'd denied his own child and left a woman to die on the streets? "I need to know what happened between you and Miss Hart," William said quietly. "All of it. Because if I'm walking into a meeting with people who have cause to destroy us, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." "I can't," Ethan whispered. "Then you've already lost." William moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Ethan, you're removed from all major business decisions until further notice. It seems you've proven that your judgment is fatally compromised." As his father left the office, Ethan collapsed into his chair and stared at the newspaper photo again. Sophia's face smiled back at him, confident, powerful, victorious. The woman he'd discarded as worthless had become his destroyer, and the worst part was, he was finally beginning to remember just how magnificent she'd always been. Chapter 8. The Recognition. The Metropolitan Club's grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the conversation of New York's most powerful elite. But Ethan Caldwell felt like he was walking through a nightmare. The annual philanthropy gala was the event of the social season, where billion-dollar deals were made over champagne and charity auctions, provided cover for political maneuvering. Ethan adjusted his black tie with trembling fingers, his eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of Gabriel Stone and his wife. His father had insisted they attend, despite Ethan's desperate protests. "We need to show strength," William had said. Running away now would be admitting defeat. But Ethan already knew they were defeated. The meeting at the club 2 days ago had been a masterclass in controlled destruction. He'd watched his father, the man who'd never shown weakness to anyone, treated like an equal by Sophia Hart, former housekeeper Sophia Hart, who now commanded more respect in a single conversation than Ethan had managed in years of running the family business. "Ethan, darling, you look absolutely miserable." Isabella Harper appeared at his elbow, resplendent in a silver gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. His fiancée was everything a Caldwell wife should be: beautiful, well-connected, and completely empty-headed. "Whatever is wrong?" "Nothing that concerns you," Ethan muttered, still searching the crowd. "Oh, there's Gabriel Stone." Isabella waved enthusiastically across the room, and his wife. "She's even more gorgeous in person. I simply must meet her." Ethan's blood turned to ice as he followed Isabella's gaze. There, across the crowded ballroom, stood Gabriel Stone in an impeccably tailored tuxedo. But it was the woman beside him who made Ethan's reality shatter into a million pieces. Sophia wore a stunning emerald gown that showcased her curves like liquid silk, her hair swept into an elaborate updo that framed a face transformed by confidence and power. She moved through the crowd like royalty receiving tribute, accepting greetings from senators and CEOs, with the casual grace of someone born to command. In her arms, she cradled a baby dressed in a tiny designer tuxedo that somehow made the scene even more surreal and devastating. "She's absolutely radiant," Isabella continued, oblivious to Ethan's growing panic. "I heard she single-handedly negotiated the Stone Enterprises deal with the Japanese." Can you imagine a woman handling international business like that? Ethan couldn't breathe. The elegant woman commanding attention from senators and CEOs was the same person he'd thrown out of his house in a nightgown. The confident socialite discussing foreign markets with ambassadors was the desperate girl he'd called worthless trash. "Ethan. Ethan. Are you listening to me? I need air," he mumbled. But before he could escape, the crowd around them shifted, and suddenly, Sophia was walking directly toward them. Time slowed to a crawl as she approached, her emerald gown rustling softly against the marble floor. Up close, she was even more devastating. Her skin glowed with health and happiness. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence and something that might have been amusement, and she carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of a woman who knew exactly how powerful she was. "Isabella Harper," his fiancée gushed, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I've been dying to meet you. Mrs. Stone. You're absolutely legendary." "How kind of you to say." Sophia's voice was warm honey over steel, and when her eyes met Ethan's over Isabella's head, her smile turned predatory. "And you must be Ethan Caldwell." I don't believe we've been properly introduced. The audacity of it pretending they were strangers hit Ethan like a physical blow. We haven't met before, have we? Sophia tilted her head thoughtfully, as if trying to place him. I don't recall, though you do look familiar. Perhaps we met in passing somewhere. Isabella laughed. Ethan, honestly, how could you forget meeting someone so accomplished? Mrs. Stone practically runs Stone Enterprises alongside her husband. Sophia. Gabriel appeared beside his wife, his hand settling possessively on her lower back. I'd like you to meet William Caldwell. Ethan's father approached with the kind of respectful attention he usually reserved for heads of state. Mrs. Stone, the pleasure is entirely mine. Our conversation the other day was most illuminating. Mr. Caldwell, thank you again for taking the time to meet with us. I hope our discussion proved educational. The subtle emphasis on the last word made Ethan's stomach clench. Indeed it did. William's eyes flicked briefly to his son. It's remarkable how different perspectives can shed new light on old situations. The baby in Sophia's arms chose that moment to make a soft sound, drawing Isabella's attention. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful baby. How old is he? 18 months, Sophia replied, her voice soft with genuine affection as she looked down at the child. This is Noah, Ethan's son, his flesh and blood, dressed like a little prince and held by the woman he'd tried to destroy. The baby's features were unmistakably familiar Ethan's own eyes, his mother's nose, the Caldwell jawline that had been passed down through generations. He looks just like his father. Isabella cooed, completely missing the tension radiating from every adult in the conversation. Yes. Sophia's eyes met Ethan's directly for the first time, and he saw 18 months of pain, rage, and cold satisfaction blazing in their depths. He does. Noah Stone, Gabriel added with obvious pride, lifting the baby from Sophia's arms. My son. The possessive claim hit Ethan like a slap. This man, his greatest rival, was claiming his child, raising his heir, giving the Caldwell bloodline his own name. Your son, Ethan repeated hoarsely. In every way that matters. Gabriel's smile was sharp. Biology is just genetics. Love and commitment make a family. How wonderful, Isabella gushed. A ready-made family, like something out of a fairy tale. More like a cautionary tale, Sophia said quietly, but her words carried enough edge to make Isabella look confused. I'm sorry? Nothing, darling. Sophia's smile was perfectly polite. I was just thinking how different things might have been if Noah's biological father had been worthy of the gift he was given. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Ethan felt sweat beading on his forehead as he realized that everyone in the conversation knew exactly what she was talking about. Everyone except Isabella. Well, his loss is clearly Gabriel's gain, William said diplomatically, but Ethan caught the warning look. His father shot him. Indeed, Sophia agreed. Some men are wise enough to recognize value when they see it. Others, she shrugged elegantly, others throw away diamonds thinking they're worthless glass. How philosophical, Gabriel murmured, his gray eyes fixed on Ethan with predatory interest. Though I've always believed that what's discarded by one man's foolishness often becomes another man's treasure. Ethan wanted to run, to disappear, to wake up from this nightmare where his former housekeeper held court among New York's elite, while his own son called another man Daddy. But his legs felt like lead, and his voice had completely abandoned him. Ethan, you're being terribly quiet, Isabella said with a forced laugh. Say something. All eyes turned to him, Sophia's blazing with triumph, Gabriel's cold with disdain, his father's warning him to tread carefully, and Isabella's confused but expectant. His baby gurgled happily in the arms of the man who'd stolen everything Ethan should have cherished. Ethan's voice cracked. You look well. I am well, Sophia replied, her tone ice-cold. Better than I've ever been, actually. Funny how life improves dramatically when you're surrounded by people who value you. The dig was so obvious that even Isabella's eyebrows rose slightly. Sophia, darling. Gabriel's voice was warm with affection. I believe the senator wanted to speak with you about the education initiative. Of course. Sophia turned back to Ethan one last time, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. It was educational meeting you. Mr. Caldwell. I hope the rest of your evening is everything you deserve." As they walked away, Gabriel's hand protectively on her back, Noah babbling happily in his adoptive father's arms, Ethan felt something inside him shatter completely. The woman he'd thrown away like garbage was now untouchable, protected by one of the most powerful men in the world, raising his son in luxury and love he'd never even tried to provide. What a fascinating woman, Isabella mused, though there was something odd about that conversation, almost like you two had met before. "We hadn't," Ethan lied, his voice barely audible. "Well, she certainly seems devoted to her family. Did you see how she looked at that baby? Like he was the most precious thing in the world." Ethan had seen, and he'd recognized the look because it was exactly how Sophia had looked at him during those stolen moments in his bedroom, with complete, unconditional love. Love he'd crushed and discarded without a second thought. As the evening continued around him, Ethan stood frozen in place, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd lost. Not just a woman, not just a child, but a chance at the kind of love and partnership that was now elevating his greatest enemy to heights Ethan would never reach. Sophia Hart, now Sophia Stone, had won completely, and Ethan Caldwell had never felt more thoroughly destroyed. Chapter 9. The Stolen Kingdom. Ethan Caldwell had been surveilling the Bright Beginnings daycare center for 3 days, his BMW concealed behind a delivery truck across the street. He knew Noah's routine by heart now: drop off at 9 o'clock m. by the Stone family's nanny, pick up at 3 o'clock p.m. Those precious hours when his son would be vulnerable, away from Gabriel Stone's fortress-like penthouse and his army of security personnel. His hands shook as he checked his watch. 2:47 p.m. 13 minutes before the nanny arrived. 13 minutes to reclaim what was rightfully his blood, his legacy, his future. The past week since the charity gala had been pure hell. Isabella had broken off their engagement after Ethan's disturbing behavior at the event. His father had officially removed him from all company operations. And the board was meeting today to discuss his permanent replacement. But worse than all of that was the image burned into his mind, his son, his flesh and blood, calling another man daddy. "I can fix this," he muttered, stepping out of the car. "I can fix everything." The daycare's cheerful facade mocked him with its painted rainbows and smiling suns. Through the window, he could see Noah playing with blocks in a corner, his dark hair catching the afternoon light. Ethan's heart clenched with a mixture of love and desperate longing. The boy was perfect, exactly what he'd imagined a Caldwell heir would look like. The young teacher at the front desk looked up with a bright smile as Ethan entered. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for Noah Stone," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I'm his uncle. There's been a family emergency." "Oh my." The teacher's face fell with concern. "But Mr. and Mrs. Stone didn't mention anyone else would be picking up Noah. I'll need to call them to confirm." "There's no time," Ethan interrupted, moving closer to the desk. "It's his grandmother. She's in the hospital. Mrs. Stone asked me to get Noah immediately." The teacher hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and compassion. "I really should call." "Please," Ethan let desperation bleed into his voice. "Every minute counts." Behind her, Noah had noticed the commotion and toddled over, his bright eyes curious. When he saw Ethan, he tilted his head with the innocent confusion of a child who almost recognized a stranger. "Daddy?" Noah asked hopefully. The word hit Ethan like a physical blow. His son was looking for Gabriel Stone, the man who'd stolen his family, his life, his future. "I'm your real daddy," Ethan whispered, dropping to his knees in front of the boy. "Your real father." But Noah stepped back, suddenly shy, and reached toward the teacher for comfort. "Sir, you're frightening him," the teacher said firmly. "I really need to make that call." Ethan's control snapped. Months of rage, humiliation, and loss exploded outward as he lunged forward and scooped Noah into his arms. The toddler immediately began crying, struggling against Ethan's unfamiliar grip with the terror of a child who knew something was very wrong. "He's my son," Ethan shouted over Noah's wails. "My blood. No one can keep me from my own child." "Sir, put him down. I'm calling security." But Ethan was already running, Noah screaming in his arms as he pushed through the daycare's front door. Other parents in the parking lot stopped and stared as he raced toward his BMW, a grown man kidnapping a terrified child in broad daylight. "Help!" the teacher screamed from the doorway. "Someone stop him." Ethan's hands fumbled with the car seat he'd hastily installed that morning. Noah's cries had turned to heartbroken sobs, the kind that spoke of genuine terror. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. His son was supposed to recognize him, to want to come home. "It's okay," Ethan whispered desperately. "Daddy's here. I'm going to take care of you." But Noah only cried harder, calling for Mama and Dada with increasing panic. Ethan managed to secure the car seat and jumped behind the wheel, his heart pounding as sirens wailed in the distance. He'd planned to take Noah to his apartment, to have time to explain, to make his son understand. But now, with police cars visible in his rearview mirror, that plan was crumbling. His phone rang, Gabriel Stone's name flashing on the screen. With trembling fingers, Ethan answered. "You have exactly 60 seconds to return my son before I end you." Gabriel's voice was pure ice, more terrifying than any scream. "He's not your son," Ethan shot back, taking a sharp turn that made Noah cry harder. "He's mine. His blood, his DNA. His blood doesn't make you his father. You pathetic piece of love makes a father. Protection makes a father, and you've never given him either. I can learn. I can be what he needs." By terrorizing him, by kidnapping him from daycare, Gabriel's laugh was harsh. "You're proving exactly why you don't deserve to breathe the same air as him." Ethan could see Stone Enterprises' black SUVs converging from multiple directions, a coordinated response that spoke of military precision. Gabriel hadn't just called the police. He'd mobilized a private army. "I just want a chance," Ethan said desperately. "I just want him to know who I am. He knows who his father is. He calls him Dada every morning and every night. You're nothing to him but a stranger who just traumatized him." The truth of those words hit Ethan harder than any physical blow. In the rearview mirror, Noah had exhausted himself crying and now sat silent, tears streaming down his face as he clutched a small stuffed animal. Ethan hadn't even noticed him grab. "Sir, this is the NYPD." A voice crackled over a loudspeaker. "Pull over immediately and release the child." Ethan's car was surrounded now, blocked in by police cruisers and Stone Enterprises vehicles. Through his windshield, he could see Gabriel stepping out of a black Bentley, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Beside him, Sophia emerged, and even at a distance, Ethan could see she was shaking with fury. "It's over, Ethan." Gabriel's voice came through the phone. "Get out of the car now. Promise me," Ethan said desperately. "Promise me I can see him. Visitation rights. Something. You gave up any rights to him when you threw Sophia away like garbage." Gabriel's voice could have frozen hell. "You made your choice. Now live with the consequences." Ethan looked back at Noah one more time. His son had stopped crying but was staring at him with wide, frightened eyes that would probably haunt Ethan's nightmares forever. "I'm sorry," Ethan whispered to the boy who couldn't understand. "I'm so sorry." He turned off the engine and slowly raised his hands as SWAT officers surrounded his car. The arrest was swift and professional. They treated him like the dangerous criminal he'd become. As they led him away in handcuffs, Ethan watched Sophia cradle Noah against her chest, the boy immediately calming in his mother's arms. "Mama," Noah sobbed against her shoulder. "Bad man." "I know, baby." Sophia's voice was fierce with protective love. "Mama's here. Mama will never let anyone hurt you again." Gabriel's arms wrapped around both of them, creating a circle of safety that Ethan had never been part of and never would be. The family he'd thrown away had reformed without him, stronger and more complete than anything he could have built. 3 hours later, Ethan sat in a holding cell, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained, his future destroyed beyond any hope of repair. The charges were serious kidnapping, endangering a child. Violation of restraining orders he hadn't even known existed. His lawyer, one of the few people still willing to take his calls, delivered the final blow during their brief consultation. "The district attorney is pushing for maximum sentences on all charges. With your profile and the media attention this is generating, they want to make an example." The man's expression was grim. And there's something else. Gabriel Stone has filed for expedited adoption proceedings based on abandonment. Since you were never on the birth certificate, never provided support, and now have a kidnapping conviction, the court is fast-tracking his petition. He can't do that, Ethan said desperately. I'm the biological father who kidnapped the child and traumatized him. Ethan, you have no legal standing here. You were never on the birth certificate, never provided support, never even acknowledged the boy's existence until today. But my rights? You have no rights. You gave them up when you threw out his mother. The lawyer's voice was final. Mr. Stone's adoption will be approved within the week. Legally, you'll have no connection to that child whatsoever. Ethan stared at the concrete walls of his cell, finally understanding the completeness of his defeat. Sophia hadn't just taken his business, his reputation, and his future. She'd erased him from his own son's life entirely. Somewhere across the city, Noah was probably being tucked into bed by the only parents he'd ever known, safe and loved in ways Ethan had never even considered, providing the boy would grow up as Noah Stone, heir to a tech empire, protected by unlimited wealth and power, never knowing that his biological father had been the monster who'd tried to steal him away from everything good in his life. And Ethan Caldwell, disgraced, alone, and facing years in prison, finally understood that some betrayals echo through generations, and some mistakes can never, ever be forgiven. Chapter 10. The Crown Taken. The Caldwell family estate looked exactly as Sophia remembered it, imposing Gothic architecture, surrounded by manicured gardens that whispered of generational wealth and unshakable power. But now, as she stepped from her Rolls-Royce onto the circular driveway, she wasn't the desperate housekeeper who'd been dragged out in shame. She was the conquering queen, returning to claim her rightful throne. Welcome home, Mrs. Stone, Gabriel murmured beside her, his hand protectively resting on her rounded belly, where their twins grew strong and healthy. It feels perfect, Sophia replied, her voice rich with satisfaction as she surveyed the property that now belonged to them. 18 months had passed since Ethan's imprisonment for kidnapping, and the Caldwell family's complete destruction had been swift and thorough. Noah, now 3.5 years old, ran beside them, holding his father's hand, chattering excitedly about the big castle they were visiting. He remembered nothing of his biological father. That terrifying stranger who'd stolen him from daycare was just a nightmare that had faded from his young mind. To Noah, Gabriel Stone was simply Daddy, the man who read him bedtime stories and taught him to build spaceships with blocks. Mama, big. Noah pointed at the mansion with wonder. Yes, baby, very big. Sophia lifted him into her arms, pressing a kiss to his dark hair. This is where Mama used to work before Daddy found us and made us a real family. The massive front doors opened as they approached, revealing a figure Sophia had been anticipating with dark pleasure for months. Mrs. Stone, Margaret Caldwell said quietly, her voice stripped of the imperious authority it had once carried. Ethan's mother stood in the doorway, wearing a simple black dress and an expression of profound humiliation. Welcome. Everything is prepared as you requested. The fall of the Caldwell matriarch had been particularly satisfying to watch. Margaret, who had once barely acknowledged Sophia's existence, now depended on her former housekeeper's mercy for survival. With William Caldwell dead from a stress-induced heart attack, Ethan imprisoned, and their assets frozen by federal investigators, Margaret had been left with nothing but mounting legal bills. Her society friends had abandoned her the moment scandal broke. It was Sophia who'd offered her a lifeline employment as head housekeeper in the mansion she'd once ruled, the only job reference she could provide in her disgraced state. Thank you, Margaret, Sophia said graciously, stepping into the marble foyer where she'd once scrubbed floors. I trust the preparations for tonight's dinner party are proceeding smoothly. Yes, ma'am. The senator's party will be served at 8, exactly as you specified. Excellent. Sophia handed Noah to Gabriel and moved deeper into the house, her heels clicking on the marble she'd once cleaned on her hands and knees. And the master bedroom, completely redecorated according to your specifications? I've moved my things to the servants' quarters as requested. The servants' quarters, where Sophia had once lived in a tiny room barely larger than a closet, grateful for employment and dreaming of impossibilities. Now, Margaret Caldwell Society Queen, Charitable Foundation board member, arbiter of New York's elite social circle, slept in that same cramped space, dependent on Sophia's charity for her very survival. "How the mighty have fallen," Sophia murmured. Running her fingers along the banister of the grand staircase she'd polished countless times. "Ma'am?" Margaret's voice was carefully neutral. "Nothing, Margaret. Just reminiscing." Sophia turned with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Tell me, have there been any messages from your son?" Margaret's face went ashen. "No, ma'am. Ethan is. He's not permitted contact with anyone outside his approved list." "Of course." Such a pity about his situation, Sophia's voice dripped false sympathy. A brilliant young man with such promise, reduced to menial labor in a federal facility. Though I suppose he's learning valuable lessons about humility and consequence. The truth was even more delicious than Sophia let on. Ethan wasn't just imprisoned, he was broken. Reports from guards and inmates painted a picture of a man who'd lost his mind along with his freedom. He spent his days in the prison laundry, washing uniforms and muttering about lost opportunities and stolen children. His fellow inmates called him Baby Daddy and delighted in tormenting him about the son who'd grown up calling another man father. "Ma'am," Margaret said quietly, "if I may ask, will you be requiring my services permanently?" The question hung between them, loaded with desperation. Margaret knew, as well as anyone, that without Sophia's protection, she would end up homeless and destitute. Her social circle had abandoned her the moment the Caldwell fortune evaporated, and no one in their world employed disgraced society matrons as housekeepers. "That depends," Sophia said thoughtfully, "on your performance, your attitude, and your willingness to remember your place." "I understand completely." "Do you?" Sophia stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Because there was a time when you looked at me like I was dirt beneath your shoes, when you treated me like my thoughts, my feelings, my very existence was meaningless. Do you remember that, Margaret?" The older woman's hands trembled slightly. I was wrong. I see that now." "You were wrong," Sophia agreed, "and now you serve the woman you once dismissed as just the help. You clean the floors I walk on, prepare the meals I eat, and depend on my mercy for your survival. Tell me, how does that feel?" Margaret's composure finally cracked, tears gathering in her eyes as she whispered, "Like justice." "Good answer." Sophia's smile turned genuine. "We'll get along just fine, Margaret, as long as you remember that every comfort you enjoy, every kindness you receive, every moment of security you have, it all comes from me, the woman your son threw away like garbage." "I remember," Margaret said brokenly. "I'll never forget. See that you don't." The sound of a car in the driveway interrupted their conversation. Through the windows, Sophia could see another vehicle approaching, an old, battered sedan that looked completely out of place among the luxury cars typically seen on the estate. "Are you expecting someone else?" Gabriel asked, joining them with Noah still in his arms. Sophia's smile turned predatory. "Actually, yes. I believe that's our final guest for the evening." Margaret looked confused. "Ma'am, I wasn't told about any additional." "It's not a guest for dinner," Sophia interrupted. "It's someone who's come to beg for scraps." The knock on the door was hesitant, almost apologetic. Margaret moved to answer it, but Sophia gestured for her to stop. "I'll get it," Sophia said, walking slowly toward the entrance. "After all, I know exactly who it is." When she opened the door, Ethan Caldwell stood on the threshold like a broken ghost of his former self. Released on parole after 18 months for good behavior and overcrowding, prison had not been kind to him. His once perfect hair was gray and unkempt, his expensive clothes replaced by ill-fitting thrift store items, his confident bearing reduced to the slouched posture of a defeated man. "Hello, Ethan," Sophia said pleasantly, as if greeting an old acquaintance rather than the man who'd tried to destroy her life. "Sophia," his voice was barely recognizable, "I heard you were living here now." "Living here?" She laughed, the sound musical and cruel. "Oh, Ethan, I don't live here. I own here. This is my house now, my property, my kingdom. And you?" She looked him up and down with obvious disdain. "You're trespassing." Behind her, she heard Margaret gasp in recognition and horror. Noah peeked around Gabriel's shoulder, studying the stranger with curious but wary eyes. I was hoping, Ethan continued desperately, that I could see him just for a minute. I know I have no rights. But what? Sophia's voice turned ice cold. You thought after kidnapping him, traumatizing him, and serving time in federal prison, you deserved a reward. He's my son. No. Gabriel's voice cut through the air like a blade as he stepped forward. Noah secure in his arms. He's my son legally, biologically through adoption, and in every way that actually matters. You're just the sperm donor who tried to hurt him. Ethan's eyes fixed on Noah with desperate hunger. He looks so much like me. Like me, Gabriel finished firmly. He has my name, my protection, my love. He calls me Daddy because that's what I am. You're nothing to him but a cautionary tale. Noah, Ethan whispered, reaching toward the boy. Noah immediately hid his face against Gabriel's shoulder, clearly frightened by the stranger's intensity. No, the toddler said firmly. Go away, bad man. The words hit Ethan like physical blows. His own son, his flesh and blood, feared him and wanted him gone. Please, Ethan begged, his voice breaking completely. I've lost everything, my family, my company, my freedom. Can't you find it in your heart to show mercy? Sophia studied him for a long moment. This broken shell of the man who'd once commanded her world. Mercy, she repeated thoughtfully. The way you showed mercy when you threw me out, pregnant and homeless? The way you showed mercy when you denied our child's existence? The way you showed mercy when you left me to die on the streets? I was wrong, Ethan sobbed. I was stupid and cruel and wrong. I see that now. I see what I lost, what I threw away. Please, I'm begging you. You're begging the wrong person, Sophia interrupted. You should have begged for Noah's forgiveness when you kidnapped him. You should have begged for mine when you had the chance. But that time is over. She stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the diamonds around her neck, the designer dress that cost more than he'd made in prison, the glow of pregnancy and happiness that radiated from her. Look at me, Ethan, she commanded with deadly softness. Really look. I am everything you could have possessed, brilliant, beautiful, wealthy, powerful. I could have been your empress, your equal, the mother of your dynasty. Instead, I became all of those things for a man who recognized my true worth. I know, Ethan whispered brokenly. I know what I destroyed. Do you? Because I don't think you comprehend the magnitude of your loss. Sophia's voice was velvet, wrapped around razor wire. You didn't just lose a woman. You lost the love of your lifetime. I loved you with religious devotion, with everything I possessed, and you obliterated that gift for what? Arrogance? Cowardice? Fear of what your pathetic social circle might whisper? I was an idiot. Yes, you were. And now you get to live with that knowledge for the rest of your miserable life. She stepped back, her hand moving protectively to her belly. These babies I'm carrying, they'll grow up knowing their worth, knowing they're treasured, knowing their father would move heaven and earth to protect them. They'll never doubt for 1 second that they're loved. Sophia, please, get off my property, she said quietly, and don't come back. Ever. If I see you within a mile of my family again, I'll have you arrested for violating your restraining order. I have nowhere else to go, Ethan said desperately. No money, no family, no hope. That's not my problem. Sophia's voice was final. You made your choices. Now live with them. She began to close the door, but Ethan's broken voice stopped her. I loved you, he whispered. I did love you. I was just too proud and stupid to admit it. Sophia paused, studying his haggard face for just a moment. She saw a ghost of the man she'd once worshipped, the man whose bed she'd shared and whose child she'd carried with such hope. I know you did, she said softly. That's what makes this so perfect. You lost the love of your life because you were too weak to fight for it, and now you get to watch her live happily ever after with someone who was strong enough to claim her. The door closed with a final, echoing slam. Through the window, Sophia watched Ethan stand on her doorstep for several long minutes before finally walking away, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He got into his battered car and drove away from the estate that had once been his birthright, now banished forever from the kingdom he'd inherited and lost. Is it over? Gabriel asked quietly, pulling her into his arms. Sophia leaned back against his chest, watching Ethan's car disappear down the long driveway. In her arms, Noah played with her necklace, completely secure in his parents' love. In her belly, 2 new lives grew strong and safe, surrounded by the wealth and protection their father would provide. "It's over," she confirmed. "Ethan Caldwell is nothing now less than nothing. And she gestured to encompass their family, their empire, their perfect life. We have everything." As night fell over the Caldwell estate now, the stone estate Sophia stood in the master bedroom that had once belonged to the family that employed her. She'd redecorated completely, erasing every trace of the Caldwells and replacing it with her own elegant taste. This room, where she'd once changed sheets and dusted furniture, was now her sanctuary, her throne room, her castle. The woman who'd once been thrown out in shame now ruled the kingdom, while the king who'd banished her lived in exile and despair. The revenge was complete, the victory absolute, and Sophia Stone, née Hart, had never been happier.